about to kick off. It's the Earl Howe Trophy. We're missing Clive Fidgen from the outside of the front row, but Pat Blakeney-Edwards gets the start. Better than Gareth Burnett in pole. The Blue Alta going backwards, and unfortunately one of the Invictas also not getting away as smoothly as would be liked. And now just about hooking it up, but a fast start, a slow start, and we've got everyone underway with the exception of Clive Fidgen, who was not on the outside of the front of the grid. So let's just flick back to a replay and see how the start looked from the front end. In the middle of the grid, Pat Blakeney-Edwards gets the power down, the little Frazer Nashs TT rep. The pale blue Alta, which is the most modern car in the field. These are two very small cars in comparison to the larger Lagondas, Invictas, et al. And the Bentleys at the tail end of the grid. But, oh dear, we've already got one car going off, I guess. That one has decided to go no further. Unfortunate losing them, but the field is working away around the opening lap, and now Gareth Burnett is in front of Pat Blakeney-Edwards. He got the poorer start, but he's got that Alta to the front of the field. Car number 70 leads the way. Unfortunately, not everyone going to the end of this race. Pat Blakeney-Edwards in second place. Third place is Christoph Cowens in the silver Vauxhall. You can see they're already spacing out a little bit. And then car number 71, fourth, it's the very elegant Invicta low-type chassis. Alan Brown on board. So a brilliant start from the middle of the front row there.
Yeah, and the fastest lap, of course, for Gareth Burnett. He's storming away in the Alta, which was built in 1939. So these, as you just saw briefly on your screen, it's British built pre-World War II sports cars, and this year in the Earl Howe, it's British cars only, and that is to celebrate Johnny Hindmarsh and Louis Font's triumph at the wheel there, Lagonda M5 Rapide, all those years ago.
Yeah, well, it broke the run of Alpha victories, but a really good getaway by Pat Blakeney-Edwards. But Gareth Burnett hooked it up. He was way quicker in qualifying. It must be pointed out, there were oil on the track when they went out. A lot of people were quite cautious, but caution is not Gareth Burnett's middle name. He put it on pole enormously well. One of the cars we saw going off was the car starting from the second row. That was Louis Frankel. We've lost his MGK3. We saw the tail end of the car being parked up. Now we've got the white Invicta starting to show its form. Alan Brown, he started the lap in fourth place and he's hunting, and there's another car parked at the side. I think that was the one that got away very slowly from the grid, car number 14, I think it was. Yeah, it was one of the Invictas parked up. That's not the Invicta, but here's our race leader, Gareth Burnett, the small, nimble, one of only 6 of these fantastic little Alta two-seater sports, and he's really got the legs at the moment. Fastest lap of the race, yeah, he's 3.9 seconds clear. Then you got the gap back to this great little battle for third and fourth places, and it's Christoph Cowens from 5th on the grid who's just holding that position. But only just. It's really going to be nip and tuck, and in behind we have Alan Brown, who's come up from 7th on the grid. They're having a good little battle, but the first two, not home and hose, just got more than a quarter of an hour remaining, but they've clearly the class of this field. And just remember, these are all British cars from the pre-war years, the interwar years, effectively. Right, and Gareth Burnett's 1938, 1939 Alta is, you know, considerably more modern. These great big Bentleys, Lagondas and Talbots coming down the start-finish straight. Yeah,
well, Pat Blakeney-Edwards and Frazer Nashs is from 1935, so the Alta's a few years younger than Pat Blakeney-Edwards. We've got some battles that are continuing further on down the field, and actually, Bruce, this marks the 90th anniversary of British Lagonda taking victory at Le Mans 24 hours back in 1935, and it broke that run, didn't it, of 4 consecutive Alfa Romeo victories. So the number 90 you could just see is on our drone camera. That's the more Frazer Nashs Super Sports, currently in 6th place, being chased down by Taylor in the MGK3. So wherever you look, these are pre-wars, but they're all nip and tuck and desperate to try and make moves further up the field.
Yes, and of course these cars weren't really made for short sprint races. They were made, and lots of them, absolutely to see if they could win the big one, win at Le Mans. You know, it's big business now, the World Endurance Championship absolutely blooming, the manufacturers pouring in. But in the 30s, you know, when you had the adage, win on Sunday, sell on Monday, it had a huge impact, and of course the coverage in the newspapers was huge back then for events like that, and all the manufacturers, they wanted endurance. They changed a position for third place because Alan Brown is just pushing, and he's made it through into third, just demoting Christoph Cowens. But I have a feeling this is a battle that should run the whole way. And tucked in behind them is car number 75, Aston Martin's speed model from Mercury Bertelli with Robert Blakemore. He may get a role to play, and so chopping and changing. It's not after you, Claude, it's after you, but only for a handful of moments, and I'll be fighting back. Christoph
slides it all the way down the inside at the first corner, and actually this can allow, you can see the Aston Martin, the number 75 Aston Martin, just in the background. That's Robert Blakemore that's going to go on, you keep fighting, you keep battling away, and I'll slowly inch my way back. So this is the battle for the final podium position, and with just over 13 minutes remaining, I feel like they're going to be changing positions more frequently throughout the race.
Yeah, I don't think Robert Blakemore's quite got the pace, but definitely this battle for third place, they are slightly delaying each other. They chop, they change, but at the moment it's Christoph Cowens who's fallen back. Who's moved up into third. He was fourth at the start of the lap. He's moved into third. He seems the quickest of this trio, but Alan Brown driving very well, and just at different points on the circuit, you have a little more performance and handling from the Invicta. Again, coming out of the second of the Lavance, he's getting right behind number one, which is the Vauxhall of Christoph Cowens, and going around the outside. Of course, that's slightly diminishing returns, but it's the longest straight on the circuit, and coming down towards Woodcote Corner, it looks though the Invicta is just in front. How good are they on brake? These are big, heavy cars, and okay, if you're coming around, you're going on the outside. That is confident driving for the pair of them, and a lot of trust, but really, around the outside, Christoph Cowens, I doff my hat.
That was close racing, and the 71 has a big history. It has to all of these cars, of course, that we're seeing here, but the little white Invicta that's just now been demoted back into fourth place was bought by the India Rubber Company to demonstrate its tyres. So, I mean, what a beautiful car to demonstrate your tyres on.
Yeah, very, very elegant indeed. And, of course, you look in these cars and you can imagine, obviously, no lap belts, seat belts of any sort. Certainly in those days before roll bars, if the car was going to crash, you largely wanted to vacate the scene. But what we're starting to see is Christoph Cowens escaping, and instead of fighting him, Alan Brown has now got Blakemore right onto his tail. Robert Blakemore. Now, and just behind them, we have these great battles. This is the battle for sixth. 3 cars, almost 4 cars in that grouping. And just at the front of that, you've got little MG Magnet, Andrew Taylor. Fabulous rear shot. So you love that shot, Alice, as they sweep through the first part of Madrid. And when you see cars like this, you could just see how they're working their tyres, how dynamic they are. Is the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail?
Well, yeah, who knows? But you can also see the lean. They're not strapped in. So all these historics that you're seeing in this race, none of them have got seat belts. I'd be holding on for dear life, and maybe that is what they're doing, as they're finding their way through Ford Water now. They'll bleed up the hill and go into the first part of St Mary's. So the 29 just leading in front of this little gaggle. As you said, that's the MG K3, and actually holds 10 British land speed records for a 1100cc car, and that was set in 1991 and 94. And I think, you know, for a car that old to set it that sort of late, that's pretty good going.
Yeah, I mean, that was speed record, and obviously that was a very small engine car there, 1100cc, but some beautiful cars. And the 2 red Aston Martins, Chloe Mason, Holly Mason, Franchitti, they are fabulous, all from the 1010, both from the 1010 stable owned by Nick Mason, and they are brilliant. Why are they not racing in British Racing Green? And that's because Bertelli had a superstition. He was involved with those cars, and he decided Italian Racing Red, his native colour, would be better. Now, hand up 45 is pulling off a few failures. One of the Lagondas, that's Jeremy Brewster, so disappointment for him. Is it something he can get going again? Hard to tell, but of course he'll be looking at what gauges he has, and that's a shame. He'll be dropping down the order outside the top 10 and falling backwards, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a bit of smoke coming out the back of that, so I can imagine he's going to either pull it to safety or slowly make his way back to the pits. The gap at the front is stabilised somewhat. They're doing actually nearly identical times at the front of the field.
Yeah, Gareth Burnett just has the legs. He's had the best lap of the race, but at the moment they've dropped away from that pace. And as you said, yeah, separated by actually 0.004 of a second in terms of their lap pace last time around. They've got 5 laps on the board. They're comfortably out front. 17 seconds clear of the third place car of Christoph Cowens. Good to get sight of some other cars through the length of of the field here. And here's Gareth Barnett. He's starting to pick up the lapping. And when you walk around the Earl Howe paddock, this, along with the Frazer Nashs chain gang cars, the TT Reps, are the smallest by far, because the Lagondas are huge, the Bentleys are huge, the Invictas are long and low, and so it goes on. But Gareth, you know, so able in so many cars, doesn't need to push too hard. He can choose his moment. He's just coming across the tail of the Talbot AO90, driven by Joel Paulson. He knows that car well. He also had the spatial awareness to look in that little mirror and just check what was coming up. It was small, it was low, it was blue, it was Gareth Burnett. He knew it was coming and did exactly the right thing.
So Gareth Burnett, he's quite comfortable at the front from Blakeney Edwards, but we've seen across many of the races today that traffic plays a big part, and they've already started to hit the traffic. You see it possibly benefited Burnett in that instance, because he's stretched his lead, and it was a better middle sector from him. But fantastic to see these cars and the reliability of them as well.
Now, talking about the little and the large, one of the smaller cars, as we said, is leading the race. That's the Alta. In second place is this Frazer Nashs TT replica. This is a car that has chain-driven. A smaller engine gets away with it. The chain is much more efficient in getting majority of that power to the driven wheels. And Pat Blakeney Edwards has been running these for a very long time, knows how to drive them. The Frazer Nashs racing environment is huge. It's friendly, and we've got a great array of cars from the Frazer Nashs stable doing great things, including Matthew Moore, car number 90, was having a good run too in his. Here's a different model, but it's the way you have to drive these cars. They're nimble. Now you suddenly take a look, the little Aston Martin in red, a couple of Bentleys, and another Aston Martin behind him. In fact, it's Aston Martins and Bentleys, 5 cars altogether. Car number 2 is a Bentley 4.5 litre, Graham Goodwin. That's smoking a little bit. But again, different driving styles and an awfully large difference between the lightest and heaviest cars this era. But just in those pre-wars years, just before the Second World War, suddenly smaller was becoming a little bit more attractive as the way to go racing.
It is, and actually the number 7 Bentley that we've got out there, that's down in 11th place. I wonder if we can catch that at some point around the circuit. But that was driven to the event from mid-Wales, so that's come all the way. I mean, that's a trek on a normal, in a modern-day car, let alone a 1925 Bentley Speed model. So,
you know, Alice, they're more common on the road than you'd think. Not even in the summer months. There is something wonderful about the Brits. The Brits drive cars. Now let's take a look on the move. Car 75. I'll come back to the thought about. That's a speed model Aston Martin. Robert Blakemore. He's up into 4th place now. He was running 5th, a little distance off Alan Brown's number 71 Invicta, but you could see he was just starting to find form, starting to pick up not just pace but position too, waving to his pit crew. Yeah, quite happy with life at the moment. So a great array of cars. Nobody can do anything about Gareth Burnett. 7 seconds clear of the Frazer Nashs TT rep of Pat Blakeney Edwards, who in turn has the best part of half a minute over 3rd place Christoph Cowens in number 1. Thank you very much, Christoph Cowens, in his Vauxhall. And let's look at some other cars from the front end. Of course, we were talking about Bentleys and Lagondas as well, so plenty of those, but they were largely starting towards the tail of the field. Great looking car, the short, the Super Sports Bentley. Look for car number 9, just going through short. You know, they were what they said on the tin. They were shorter because the short wheelbase really helped with their handling. And this was the start of cars becoming a little bit smaller, but as you see, within a handful of years, because that was introduced in the mid-20s, within a decade, the cars were definitely smaller. Viz, our race leader, the little Alta of Gareth Burnett.
And it was the first Bentley, you can see the number 9, to wear the green badge, the coveted green label, and one of the rarest Bentley models. 100 mile an hour, can reach Super Sport, 3-litre engine. Currently down in 10th place, so having that battle with Graham and Searle just slightly further up the road.
Now it explains why Alan Brown was dropping back in that Invicta. Remember, he had that battle for 3rd place, just fell to 4th as Robert Blakemore went through. Clearly something beginning not to work as it should, and I think that was probably a wise move. If you sense something is going on your car, you've only got another 5 minutes of racing, there isn't any point on thrashing on. Stop before the damage is done. Right, Gareth Burnett, our race leader, one of 6 of these fantastic, nimble little Altas. Of course, as soon as that was built, the Second World War started. You never know how that affected its ongoing development. We came out the other end of hostilities at the end of 1945, and the world was a different place, and technology had moved on too. But at the time, small, nimble, did exactly what a racing driver would like. And again, I keep talking about how people realise maybe these cars that were almost the size of trucks, some of the cars from the early 20s, you know, that was not the way to advance. But Gareth Gareth Burnett, doesn't matter what he gets into, he's just a really, really neat, tidy, balanced driver. He effectively needed one flying lap to set that pole position. The track was oily at the time, he was 4 and a bit seconds clear. Job was done. He knew he had to get it done today. In the race, he was overtaken off the front row of the grid, so his pole position was wasted, but didn't fall back too far. And having got ahead of Pat Blakely-Edwards, he's street cleared. He's sitting on that, but as you said, he's sort of settled to the pace, about 7.5 seconds clear.
He is feeling pretty comfortable, must say, out front. A little bit of traffic to navigate in front of there. We are catching again the number 27 Aston Martin from 1935. Chloe Mason at the wheel of that. The straight 4 1.5 litre engine, doing a great job. And as you said, the 10 tenths Motorsports Limited running that, not in your traditional Aston Martin green.
Yeah, not the national racing colours that almost all cars raced in. Of course, British racing green seemed to be myriad shades of green, but from mid-green to dark green. But the red, they felt, why be superstitious, particularly if you're going to some of the races they went to. And what this car was built for the TT, the Tourist Trophy, when it was run in Northern Ireland on the Ards Peninsula circuit. Go and visit it someday. It's all public roads, fearsomely fast, with great big stone walls and gate posts on the flanks of it. So you needed to carry the luck into that and make sure you come out the other end. Right, let's take a look. There's still Gareth Burnett leading now by 10 best part of 11 seconds. He suddenly just improved his fastest lap of the race by over a second, so he's just trying to get to the end even sooner. But we've still got probably 2, maybe 3 more laps. But he's also working the traffic too, because certainly as he and Pat Blakely-Edwards pick their way through the back markers, you can gain a bit, you can lose a bit, but there's no point taking any risks. So of course a little bit of caution can be rather useful. It
can be, but he's not taking any caution. He's just set the fastest lap of the race, 45.5, and fastest of anybody in the first sector. So traffic, what traffic? I can still set fastest overall lap times. You can see just breezing past them as he's heading up the Lavant Straight, and then he'll fork left and into one of the heaviest braking zones into Woodcote Corner. Yeah, okay, just think about this. Of course, heavy braking, he's in probably one of the lightest cars in the field. He also is so much smaller. It's nimble. He can just absolutely position it where he wants to go. Bentley in front, not for very much longer. But again, great hand signals there. That was from the driver of the Super Sports Bentley. We saw earlier William Metcalf. But again, a lot of these drivers spend all season racing with each other. They can assess the performance of their rivals. But when you're William Metcalf, you're looking down as Gareth Burnett comes past. And I think what I like is they have respect not just for each other, but for the machinery as well, and they respect the history and how old, and also this is a fast Goodwood circuit as well, so you have to give respect to your rivals. So really nice to see all of them being nice and polite. The back markers are moving firmly out of the way.
It is, and you've got to be confident with the car here, because one of the features of the Goodwood Motor Circuit is the fact it's just got such fantastic flow. Very hard to actually spot your turning points, but knowledge. And a lot of these drivers have raced here a fair few times, but it's rewarding once you get your car just sort of behaving the way you want it to. Well, the hardest section of the circuit is the section we're looking at now. It's the sweep into the first part of the Smurries, over the rise the second part, into the compression, then up the slope to the following corner, the first of the 2 Lavant corners. One follows the other, but it's a great overtaking opportunity into the first one of those. But then if you make a mistake in that, it's a great opportunity for the car you've been challenging to get the power down better on the exit, and then they can carry that advantage all the way through the kink and down to Woodcote. So, sometimes you have an overtaking gambit, it doesn't work, and you really cost yourself.
We saw a shot briefly there of the 64, which was Mark Faulkner in the Lagonda, and the size difference between that and our race leader as Burnett has turned on the headlights. Now maybe that's a sign to the rest of the traffic to move slightly, but the Lagonda that we saw runs a 4.5 litre Meadows 6-cylinder engine, so much bigger, a bit more powerful than quite a few of these cars on the grid.
Yeah, older, more powerful, but certainly an awful lot larger. Much larger. So looking down, but not going to be looking down for much longer. So 1 more lap to go. We'll get the graphic any second now. The checkered flag won't be out this time. It can come down. Well, it will come down when our race leader Gareth Burnett comes around at the end of this lap. So 11 laps on the board. His margin of advantage over the second place, number 19, Frazer Nashs TT rep, is now 12.2 seconds. In fact, that's picked up its pace, but again, I think the ebb and flow has been largely how brave Gareth Burnett has been through the traffic.
He has. He's just gone past through the number 12. That's Lee Searle in the Lagonda V12. So he makes his way up through Fordwater for the final time. He's got a little bit more traffic. Is that the number 2, one of our Bentley 4.5 litres, Graham Goodwin, should I say, at the wheel of that. And then through St Mary's, one of the trickiest. You go left, you go right, should I say, then you go left, and he gently brings it out to the edge of the circuit, choosing not to use all the road. I mean, he's 12 seconds ahead. He doesn't need to.
Doesn't need to, but again, just so rewarding when your car's handling the way you want to. Your tyres are up to the right sort of temperature. Obviously, it's not as critical with these early tyres because they didn't warm up to the extent that modern racing tyres do. Pat Blakeney-Edwards, 12 and a bit seconds down. No reason to take risks. Into Lavant he goes, picking his line. So the two smaller cars at the front, the Alta, then the Frazer Nashs TT, then the car in third, been driven really very well indeed. The Vauxhall, car number 1 of Christoph Cowens, owned by Gregor Fisk in this car, won the John Duff Revival at the race at the Revival 2019. But it's the fact that most of these cars, I think you have to stand back and admire the fact these were built just after the First World War up to just before the Second World War. Most notably this car, the mid-blue Alta, built just before second round of hostilities, and Gareth Burnett has driven it very, very well indeed. Fastest lap of the race so far, and there is the checkered flag. Job done. Looking in the background, it was be about 12 seconds down. Wow, here's the car in second place. Pat Blakeney-Edwards working away at the wheel. He may even yet pass his number 2 Bentley, put another lap on that before the end of the race. No, there's no space, no point for risk, but he does get through. Second place is his, 14.5 seconds. He backed off a little bit. And will Christoph Cowens be rewarded with third place in car number 1, which is the Vauxhall that he's driven very nicely from 5th on the grid. Don't forget, we didn't have the outside front row starter, Clive Fidgen, and here is the car in third place. So we could have had 2 TT rep Frazer Nashs fighting over second place, but as it was Pat Blakeney-Edwards on his own, and he was on his own because Gareth Burnett just got going after a poor start and ran away in the distance. So into third place comes Christoph Cowens in the Vauxhall. That's the 3090 Brooklyn Special. Of course, a lot of these cars did a lot of their racing on that bank semi-oval down in Surrey. He's happy with that, and he had a good fight early on, and that's what drivers really, really want. They don't want to just run away and hide. Gareth Burnett had no choice in it because his car was so quick, he was so quick, got the job done supremely well.